So today I'll be reviewing rechargeable headlamps. $15 GoForWild, $40 Klein, and a $60 Milwaukee, just to see which one is worth its price. And what prompted me to make this is that my battery-powered headlamp does not last my work shift. It dies after 5 to 6 hours in like an average medium mode. And so I figured, if I get a rechargeable one, it's good for the pocket, good for the planet. So let's see which one lasts me an 8-hour shift and how well. So let's begin. This is our budget contestant. A GoForWild, sold on Amazon for roughly $15. It's got 3 modes: bright, dimmer, strobe. And also, if you hold the power button down, you get either red light or red flashing. Obviously, flashing modes are mostly for outdoors people, hikers. I'm reviewing this as a work light, so I'm not going to be using any flashing and strobe features. Also, a bit of a gimmick, but a nice one at that, is this side of the button. When you push it, it glows blue. That means wave and turn on. If you wave in front of it, it turns on, turns off. So kind of a handy feature, so you don't have to, I guess, grope for the power button, but I don't know. It's not that hard to find when it's on your forehead, so probably kind of like a gimmick. The charging port is on the bottom. Just comes in a plain box like that. It's charging right now. When it's done charging, it will turn green. And this is how it shows that it's charged. Green light. And this is how the tilting goes. It can tilt down pretty far. The locking mechanism is kind of chintzy, but that's expected at this price point. Also, you get an easy snap-on, snap-off access to the battery compartment. Why you would need access to the battery, I don't know. I guess it's nice if you can get a spare one, you can replace it, or have a spare one to keep to switch halfway through. But just wanted to point that out. We have the Milwaukee headlamp. You get USB charger, hard hat clips, obviously the headband, the one that you can use to attach to your head or to the hard hat. Obviously the lamp itself. You have 2 floodlights, 1 spotlight, and there are various degrees of brightness. It should last with everything on 2 hours. Just the floods on high 4, floods on medium 8.5, floods on low 31 hours, and spot on 4 hours. We'll verify those claims. So I took it out of the packaging. Nice rubbery frame around the LED area. 2 floods, 1 spot. There's soft rubbery surface here to go up against your forehead or the hard hat. That's where you thread the headband through. It pivots 90 degrees up or down if you really needed it to. The reason why you would want to pivot at 90 degrees is to get access to the battery compartment. In here is Milwaukee red lithium cell. If you have a spare one, keep it charged, swap it halfway through your work shift. On-off mode button, right? So when it's on, full brightness, 2 floods on the spot. That's a 2-hour battery lifespan. Just the floods, 4 hours. Floods on medium, 8.5 hours. Floods on low, 31 hours. And spot, also 4 hours, just like the floods on high. And whichever the mode you turn it on in, this fuel gauge will tell you what you have left for the battery life. Orange solid means 25 to 80% of battery life remaining. That's rather ambiguous. 25 to 80, well, really? I mean, 60 to 80 I'd understand, but 25 to 80, that doesn't tell me much. And also, that's the charging port. Micro USB there. Milwaukee, as it charges, it goes through various states of this light. It says here that red flashing is 0 to 25, orange flashing, green flashing. Right now it's green flashing, means it's 80 to 99% charged. Now this is glowing green. The light is charged. And this is contestant number 3, Klein tools. Here they claim that at the 200 lumen brightness, it will last 12 hours. If you contrast that with Milwaukee, they say it works for 8.5 hours at 150 lumens. So here, Klein is a definite winner. If they can live up to the length claim, I'll take that. So let's see. So unlike Milwaukee, you get to choose only between the two. You can't have both the spot and the floods on. And supposedly in the flood mode, it lasts 22 hours. That's 100 lumens. And in the spot mode, which is 200 lumens, it's 12 hours. But you can't have floods and spot on at the same time. That's the first observation. So that's the on-off and the mode switch. And this is the light sensor. It has a feature where it shuts off after 3 minutes, where it detects enough of ambient light to deem it necessary to shut the main light off, supposedly to save the battery. Some find it annoying. The override for that feature is to hold the on button for 10 seconds before turning it on, or while turning it on, I guess. So, yep. And after I let that go, well, suppose that overrides it. The other way to override it, obviously, is just to stick a piece of black tape over this little sensor. And that's that. That takes care of it. My other observation is that it's this pivot is really chintzy. Look at that. These teeth, this plastic tongue is snapping into these toothy grooves. That's gonna wear out in no time at all. I mean, come on, Klein. Shame on you. You know, put some thought into it. Not happy about that. The charging port is on the side. It's a micro USB. Here you have your fuel gauge. If you push the on button down, it will tell you. Suppose this means it's fully charged. Charging it right now. This is the charging indicator. This is what it's showing. And this is what it looks like when it's fully charged. All three lights, the red, yellow, green are on, and the big green light is on, saying that it's fully charged. Also wanted to point out that Klein tilts about this much down from the vertical. But as I think pointed out before, the locking mechanism is kind of chintzy, so that's a disappointment. I can see it wearing out and stopping to, hold it in that position. Okay, let's start with a light comparison test. This is our first contender, the GoForWild, in the bright mode. In this mode, it will last 2.5 hours. However, the mode we'll be testing will be the dimmer mode. There are only two, bright or dimmer. Well, there's also flash, but we're not interested in that. So in this mode, it's supposed to last 10 hours. We'll see if it does, and we'll see what it looks like at the end of the 8.5 hour shift. I'm testing these for 8.5 hours. Not quite 10. Our contender number 2, Milwaukee. Right now, you're seeing it in the fullest blast. 2 floods, 1 spot. In this mode, a battery charge will last 2 hours. Well, we're going to test the 8.5 hour mode. So this is the floods on high. That's a 4-hour mode. In 4 hours, the battery will last in this mode. This is the mode we'll be testing it in. Where this one lasts 8.5 hours. This is the floods medium. And just for comparison, this is floods low. Still a pretty acceptable light. In this mode, it will last 31 hours, according to the manufacturer. And this is spot. Spot, just like floods on high, spot will last 4 hours. But what we'll do is we'll leave it in floods medium and see if it lasts 8.5 hours and how well it works in the end. If you recall, Klein, our next contender, has 2 lighting modes, spot and flood. The 2 floods or 1 spot. So in the spot mode, it's supposed to last 11 hours on 1 charge. In a flood mode, 22 hours on 1 charge. So let's compare what that looks like. This is the spot. Pretty decent. In this mode, it's supposed to last 11 hours. This is flood, and floods are almost as bright, if not brighter. So I don't see how that will be twice as long, but we'll stick with what manufacturer says. We're gonna switch it to spot and see if that lasts 8 to 8.5 hours and what it looks like in the end. Okay. Static comparison test. I'm not moving the camera, I'm just moving the light so you can get an idea. This is GoForWild. This is Klein. And this is Milwaukee. Sorry, I promised not to move the camera, but I think I did. The thing of it is, there's no spot. These are floods, so no matter where I move the light itself, where I move the thing itself, the light is pretty even, which I think is good. All right, so again, that's the beginning of the shift. Let's see what happens in 8.5 hours. Okay, here we are. Let's start our engine, so to speak. Also gives you an idea of the light pattern. Of course, Milwaukee is in a flood mode, and these two are spots. But right away you see the difference in the color of the light. Milwaukee is yellowish, warm LED light. These two are pretty similar light pattern, but they're cooler. All right, that's the beginning of the test. We'll come back in 8 hours and see what happens. Here we are 8 hours later. Kind of what I expected. The GoForWild lost a lot of its brightness. Klein and Milwaukee are still going strong. This is GoForWild. Well, it visibly lost a lot of brightness. Although, in fairness, in a pinch you could work by this light. It's not completely dead. Considering the price point, this is a lot more than I would have expected out of a $15 light. And this is Klein. 8.5 hours later, pretty much as bright as it was before. This is 8 hours later. This is Milwaukee. Visibly hasn't lost any of its brightness. Still just as bright. Okay guys, this is minutes after the after test. Mind you, this is 8 hours later, not 8.5. I did the 8-hour test. Kind of having a gut feeling that something is going to go wrong, and it did indeed. Instead of the rated 8.5 hours, Milwaukee chose to die after 8. I realize that this is a protection feature, that there's plenty of juice in there. It just doesn't want to drain the battery completely, so this flashing red tells me, sorry, no go. But, sorry Milwaukee, I started with the full, complete, fresh charge, and it did not last the 8.5 hours from the medium flood as advertised. So, in this category, buddy, you fail. Klein is going strong. GoForWild, can still work by it. Like I said, considering it's a $15 rinky-dink light, I'd say it's worth its money. And Klein is Klein. Klein's going strong. So here's my verdict. Dollar for dollar, I think Klein and GoForWild are kind of a tie. After 8 hours, Klein was still very bright, no issues. GoForWild was on its way out, but was still workable enough. My biggest bone to pick with Klein is that, well, for one thing, you can't hot swap a battery, which is probably not a big deal. It's a screwed-in battery compartment. The other two you can replace batteries on the fly, so to speak, if you wanted to. My other beef with it, so to speak, is the chintzy retention mechanism that keeps it in, whichever the position you set, whichever the incline you set, it's got to wear out soon. So that is not good. Other than that, if I had to pick a clear winner, dollar for dollar, it's probably the $15 bulb, $15 light. My biggest problem with Milwaukee, although it was very bright, nice friendly light, it did not last the advertised 8.5 hours in the medium mode that I chose it to work in. That's a good compromise. Seemed like a good compromise, the medium spot, medium flood, but it did not last the advertised 8.5 hours. It barely lasted 8, and it cut out. Probably a safety feature, but there you have it. Draw your own conclusions. I'm gonna review the video if you want again. But thanks for your time today. See you again soon.